Facebook. We are now recording. Hi, everyone. You are here with Stacy Taylor, men's coach, and Joanne Webb, self-love and sacred relationship coach. And you are here today joining us on the Sacred Relationship Lab because both Stacy and I believe that all relationships can be sacred, not just our intimate ones, but relationship with everything, don't we, Stacy?
Yeah. Like you can have amazing relationship with money, with your romantic partner, with your children, with your business, with life, whatever it is, that everything's a relationship, right? So if we can make it more nourishing, more fulfilling, then that's what life is really about. Because it's not good if your relationships. I'm just actually going to switch to my computer, Joanne, because it's
That's
so
all right. Yay! Oh, you're still here.
That's better. Yeah, I feel heaps better on this because this thing, I don't like this on the phone, but that's all good.
Yay. We just love technical issues, don't we? We love technical issues.
The Zoom's a nightmare. I tell you, like some days it just loads, and then other days, the minute I get the Zoom link a little bit, close to the time, it's like it just doesn't want to do its thing. So,
no.
But we're here now.
We are here, and it's so cool. So we are here for you, really. We are here for you to ask any questions around relationships, because what Stacy and I both noticed, we know people who have been to couples therapy, and a couple may go and they may see either a male or a female, and often people feel, like I can imagine if I went and there's a male there, I might feel a little bit outnumbered. A guy might feel outnumbered if it's a female there, and if you're in a multi-sex relationship, even the same sex, it's the same kind of thing, It's and we've come together so you can hear the male and the more masculine answers and the feminine and the female answers. So you've got both of us together, knowing that men and women can be on the same page. But we might just have a slightly different perspective, but we come together with similar answers, really. So we've got 3 questions today, Stacey, which is awesome. I've got 2 and I know you've got 1. So if you're listening, we are going to be answering questions around sex lives, trauma triggers, and fighting in relationships, which I think 3 things which are probably common in most relationships, to be honest with you. So Stacey, if we just dive straight into our first question. Yeah, I'll ask one, then you can ask yours, and I'll ask the other one. So one of the questions come through, says, we seem to constantly fall out over dumb stuff. This couple are constantly like bickering, falling out. And it's not massive stuff they're falling out, but they're in a pattern where it's just ongoing and they're both just exhausted. And then they can fall out over a pen, over who puts the light on. It's getting that ridiculous stuff. And they're just both going, how do we stop this?
Yeah, I'm just going to keep coming back to that same thing, when it starts getting down to the pen or who didn't do the washing or, real trivial stuff. Life's a mirror, it's not a window. And if something is triggering you, it's because there's something you need to look at within yourself. Yes, the relationship, but people don't understand that relationships are containers for healing. They're not for us to get love. They're actually containers for our growth and expansion, and a byproduct of that as we get to share an intimate, loving relationship with that person, right? But just take a look at what's underneath that trigger. If it is so trivial, but it's becoming a big issue, then it's not actually as trivial as you think it is. It's actually quite a major issue with minor things, because if it's minor things that are setting you off, you've got quite a big thing to start to look at there. So what I suggest is get working with someone who can help you see in the blind spots of the relationship. I say it all the time, we're too close to our own shit to be able to see it. You can see what your children should be doing. You can see what your friends should be doing. You can see what others can be doing, but because we've been living in our own relationship so long and we've often become defensive, so we're defending ourselves. I know this is something I was really guilty as a male, as I'd take it personal, like I'd really defend myself. But as I started to do the inner work and understand why I was being triggered, my wife can say some pretty upfront things to me now, and I just listen. I don't react. And if I do, I'm like, oh, okay, what's going on here? What is this telling me about myself? So I just come back to that. Just see what's underneath the surface level trigger, because underneath that there'll be something like he doesn't love me, or I don't feel supported, or she's she's running me down, she doesn't trust me. But it's way deeper than the surface level triggers that are going on for you guys in your relationship.
Yeah, I would totally agree with all of that. And you're absolutely right. We cannot, well, not very often can we see our blind spots. Even when, as you say, you've been on this journey for a while. I've been on this journey for a while. And then when something does happen, we've got now the skills to go, oh, I'll go and investigate that myself. But once upon a time, we didn't have these skills and we needed somebody to help us find these skills. So I totally agree. And then, but on a practical level, I guess, because, like, it sounds like they're just on this circle going all the way around. And then there's the fallings out, and sometimes you've literally just got to hop off the merry-go-round. So if on a practical level, I totally agree with what Stacy's saying, go and get some help, because it's so easy to get back on the merry-go-round. But sometimes you've just got to say, stop, let's both stop. But you've both got to have both partners who are willing to do it, and if one person starts with the bickering, what's the safe word? How can we become accountable? Are you both just ready to put your hands up and go, we're doing it, stop? Can one of you say stop, and can the other one listen? And again, they might be things that you've got to go into therapy with as well, but it is about getting off that bloody vicious cycle, isn't it, sometimes? But you've both got to be dedicated to do it, otherwise it will just carry on.
Yeah, and another thing is get out of the home space for a bit. Like if you're clashing in the home environment or in a certain environment, and you both know it's happening and you both don't want it anymore, it's starting to cause an issue. Like Joanne said, call a truce and maybe go out for a coffee somewhere, go for a walk in the park and just sit down and have an open conversation about, what is it that I'm truly doing that's upsetting you, and be willing to hear that, because that's often really hard to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And then really look at it, because what happens once we start getting triggered in this is we're not communicating, and we're actually trying through anger or frustration. We're trying to get that person to change their ways without actually saying, hey, this pisses me off and I feel like this, because we know if we say that, we're going to hurt their feelings. But the truth is about relationships is that you've got to actually be honest, and you have to be able to communicate your needs to that person, because we're not mind readers. And this is one of the things I love about the space is, women get to hear what men actually need from a masculine man's side, and men get to hear what women need from what Joanne's sharing. And it's often we think we know what that person wants, but we actually have no clue. So, if we're wanting our partner to be a mind reader to meet our needs, we're never going to get our needs met. So, it comes down to communication, and that can be a little bit tricky when there's triggers going, because often we get really hurt when someone says something to us. But, as you start to do the work, you'll realize it's not personal. And when you don't take these things personal, you take them as constructive criticism where you can actually grow and expand or give back the reflection that you're noticing, then you can really start to shift the relationship and take it to another level too.
Yeah, I agree. And another lovely thing you can do for each other, if you're on that bickering or getting at each other and just being disgruntled, it sounds like to me that is bickering. That's like not conflict at its very worst, but it's a poor habit that they've formed. Just actually stop it and actually start saying some nice things to each other as well. Even if at dinner time, if you can sit around the table and just thank the other person for something that they've done that day, and then say one thing that you appreciate about each other. I really appreciate the way you've packed my lunch for me today and you made a real effort. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that you did the vacuuming today because I didn't get the chance to do it. Whatever. I really appreciate that you look gorgeous today as always. Whatever, it can be the most simplest things. I remember talking to my sister once, and her and her boyfriend were doing this exercise, and they were obviously really pissing each other off. And one day she went, well, I think you're really good at spreadsheets, which cracked me up. But it was the only one thing she could really think at the time. She really wanted to compliment him, but she's thinking, you are really getting on my nerves right now. However, you are really good at spreadsheets, and I'll give you that. And we crack up about it to this day. But, start off small if you have to, but start saying nice things to each other. Because when was the last time you even said nice things and felt appreciated and felt thanked and was noticed for the things that you do and the things you do contribute towards a relationship? So I think that's a beautiful thing to do, even if you're not bickering. It's a really nice thing to bring in a relationship.
Yeah, that's a big thing too, like, when we first get into relationship and that honey, we're all giving. There's no holding back. But as we go through relationships and we might go through some hurt experiences and some downs and lows, we're actually playing not to be hurt anymore rather than to love and expand the relationship. And so, that I always say it, that which you wish to receive, you actually have to give it first. But if both people are waiting for the other person to give it,
You've been waiting a long time.
waiting a long time. So, like, if you're in this relationship, people don't do this, but sit down and have a conversation about how can you spice the relationship up? How can you make it fun again? How can you grow and learn about the next version of that woman that you're with? How can you, through your masculine energy, how can you bring that out of her? How can you bring that greatness out in him? How can you actually start to co-create the relationship? Because really the bickering starts, like Joanne says, when we start getting a bit bored, we're stuck in a rut, we're irritated, we're more frustrated at ourselves than the other person, but we want them to change so we can change. And so you just gets a bit stagnant and stale. But, it really comes down to, can you have raw, open conversations with each other and be able to hear the other person and not hear what's triggering you? Because once you can start to hear the other person, this is when everything will start to change for you in your relationship.
Thank you. Well, if you are bickering, well, I hope that answered your question. And please do feel free to send us any other questions for next week. So, Stacey, what was your question that you've been given?
Actually got it up. So, got a question from an amazing lady. How can one person get over trauma triggers to support the relationship? I feel like things being done are triggering me. I get overwhelmed really quickly. So I'll throw that to you, Joanne.
Well, do you know what? First of all, congratulations for being aware that you've got trauma triggers, because that is the first step to change. That's the very first step, thinking, well, I'm being triggered. And let's face it, we get triggered from morning through till night, and as we should, because it's all there for our evolution and our healing. So be thankful for the triggers. And then pretty much like what you said earlier, Stacey, as well, if you cannot find the source of the trigger, go get help with somebody who can help you. Because sometimes, I've watched healing. I'm sure you've been the same with your clients, Stacey. I've had people say to me things like, I've spent 4 years with a psychiatrist and I've spent 45 minutes with you, and I realized so much more about myself, because we get straight to the source. It's like, if you're being triggered now, what age did this come from? Are you still a 7-year-old little girl who her parents couldn't give her what she needed? Are you still that 12-year-old little girl who was humiliated in the classroom, and this is what's coming through in your relationship? Where is it coming from, and which part of you needs to be healed? And I'm pretty sure there'll be healing that needs to be done for every single age, because we've all had something happen to us, mostly innocently from the people around us, but sometimes not innocently. And where is that trigger coming from? And, rather than, if you can feel yourself being triggered as well, one of the first things you can say to yourself, rather than react and just, you can feel it, where do you feel it in your body? Is it in your chest? Is it in your hands? Where do you start to feel it? Because you've got to start noticing, you've got to start getting that mind-body connection and that spirit connection. And just say it to yourself, I am being triggered. I am feeling triggered, because that instantly stops a knee-jerk reaction and doing things we regret. There's little techniques and little tools we can have in our kit that just really help us to, then we can go, I am being triggered. And you go, oh, okay, awareness, acknowledging it because you've named it. I am being triggered. Then accept it. Okay, well, I'm being triggered. Okay, what is being triggered? If you cannot figure that out yourself, then I suggest you go and get some help. But there's always clues. I say, like, our entire life is a treasure map, and the treasure is finding ourselves and self-love and full acceptance. But you've got to look at the treasure map as well.
Yeah, it's beautiful, Joanne. You're so right. It's the first part to healing is when you're being aware that you're being triggered
Mm.
rather than you've already reacted and missed the trigger. And often you're so close to being able to see it, feel it, or understand it. So that's a great space to be in.
Mm.
Sometimes big life changes too can create triggers to come to the surface because, like Joanne said, that could have been dormant for quite some time, and all of a sudden, bang. I remember about this time last year, I was working with a lady in Australia who reached out. She booked a session with me via Zoom. And when we got on the call, the minute her face come up on the screen, her shoulders went like this. And I was like, okay, so it's a man that's hurting. And we just sat there and I said, so which man hurt you? And she said, how do you know? So, what we need to understand is our nervous system is responding well before our brain. And doesn't matter whether you're on the other side of the world via a Zoom screen, it sees that threat and it's going to respond accordingly. It's going to guard you up. It's going to try to protect you. And so that's why that trigger's coming into your life for you to resolve that, dissolve that, and move into freedom in whichever way you need to do that. So that would be my advice is just create a little bit of space, but same thing, get in and do some inner work, find someone who can just help you to reveal that to yourself because you can spend so long trying to figure this stuff out yourself. And even like Joanne said, even once you get the tools, it's still hard to see yourself because the ego's a trickster, it's like the Joker in the Batman movie. It's gonna make you think it's over here, but it's right here and you can't see it. So yeah, that's what I'd suggest too.
Yeah, no, awesome. And I want to reassure people as well. I don't know about you, Stacey, but when I have coaching clients, sometimes I'll see a coaching client for a couple of months. Sometimes they do want to stay longer, but it's not a forever journey. It's a deep journey. We get to things quite quickly. And then if you are the type of person that can go off and do it yourself, you go and do that, and then a lot of the stuff is you come to therapy or coaching or whatever it is for 1 hour a week. There's 168 hours in a week. Okay. So the other 167 hours are down to you. Coaching is about finding answers that you couldn't find yourself and getting way more resources, guides, tools, tips, techniques for your toolbox. And then so you can be autonomous and do it yourself. And then I don't know about you, Brad. Then I occasionally I'll have a coach, but I won't have a continuous coach. I have a coach, then I come away and then I go back into coaching because you need breaks as well, don't you?
Yeah, like when I first started this journey, I was working with specific coaches myself, for my own personal journey. And then I might stay with them for a little bit. Then I'd go off and have a break. And then I'd be called to go here, there. Sometimes I'd do one session with the person and never go back. But yeah, you've got to also create some space to integrate these things and learn about yourself. You can't just keep running into the coaching space over and over and over. And that's just a personal journey, which is learning along the way, trusting that intuition that, oh, yep, this journey's come to an end with this coach, or for now it's come to an end. Like I say to my clients after one of my big programs, right, you'll just come back when something comes up. And 3 months later, bang, I get a phone call, man, something's come up, I can't work through it, can I come to a session? They smash it out, they go away again, and I don't hear from them for 3 or 6 months. So it's a constant growth of evolution, like Joanne said, some of us have got 30, 40, 50 years of unconscious behaviors and patterns and wounding and coping mechanisms. And to think you're going to unwind it all like in a short space of time, it's very challenging because there's aspects that you need to see that you're not ready to see and ready to deal with. And it's like an onion, you're just going to peel back that layer at a time. So
And it keeps on going. Keeps on going. No, that was a great one. And I think, and everybody's got triggers. We've all got triggers, no matter how far down the journey we have. And that's how it has to be because, as you said, Stacey, we're always evolving. So they're good to investigate because they're telling you something and the triggers are coming up on purpose to be healed. So celebrate that, which is awesome. Okay, so we're diving into sex now, Stacy.
Oh,
Okay, so the question is, well, it was actually a bit of a statement, but it's not. It's like, what has happened to our sex life? And she says, my husband doesn't seem interested. And I've actually heard this quite a lot from people, and not just older people. I'm getting this from younger people as well. Like, and I think there's a stereotype and a thought process that we have that all men are sex mad and they're going to want to have sex all the time. And then when women are in a relationship and the man doesn't want the sex, I think they're a bit like, whoa, because often we've heard stories of the other way round. So this lady is struggling and wondering how do they get their sex life back on track, and she's actually really worried about him, what's going on for him. So I'm going to hand this one over to you.
yeah. So, like I'll say again, life's a mirror, it's not a window. Like, what's the fear for you, first of all? But another thing that I'm really witnessing in the world right now is if men don't start to deal with their trauma, they're going to start to shut down. So men will start to shut down, and one of the first things that will go is their drive.
Mhm,
The grunt hormone of a man will go. So their drive will go. They'll be lethargic. They'll almost be depressed.
mhm,
So other than work, he probably doesn't have a lot of get up and go, a lot of energy. So the body's going to start to shut down and preserve. So the testosterone is going to start to lower, and he's going to have no drive. And when a man has no drive, he has no drive for sex. So, just look at what's going on for him. And one of the things you can start to do is maybe support him, nourish him a little bit other than the sex to, just help him to see where, once a man starts shutting down and going down this path, and I see it a lot, then it's a pretty dark and lonely place for a man to be. And he doesn't even love himself. He can't even get energy for himself, let alone the sex life. So I went through this a little bit in the dark time of, my relationship breaking down, because it's, when you're dealing with childhood trauma as a man, you don't know it. And even as women, but we don't know it. So we've got these things in our psyche that are shutting us down, but we're judging ourselves from a man because we don't have the awareness yet. And so, when a man's nervous system says that's enough, you need to do something, it's going to go into preservation. And in that space, he'll have no drive for sex, let alone anything else. So just have a look what's going on for him in life. And like I say, once again, the deeper I go into this work, I realize that a lot of the conflicts that we go through can affect certain organs to a really deep level. They can affect a man's testosterone. They can alter parts of the brain. So yeah, just see what's going on there, and then just give them some love and support where you can. I know it's a sticky space and it's a sticky place to have conversations. So, if you're not in a great place in a relationship, good luck having a conversation about your sex life. So, it's not going to go too great usually, especially with the man, because it's quite a taboo subject to go to, the man and say, hey, you're not showing up and this is what I need. So.
I know. And like, I love everything you've just said, and I love hearing it from your perspective as well. I think it's so important for people to hear because, like, I know you're a men's coach, but you deal with women as well. I mainly deal with women, but I do deal with men, and I've seen a lot of men, and I've heard like from a lot of couples, there's a lot of men out there struggling to have sex, and it's not that they can't have sex. And I know people personally, and I've gone, you can have sex. You're so caught up here that how you're not even connected to your body. You're so out of your body. You're so disembodied. You're so in trauma and trauma responses, like we've just talked about, that how can your body do something that is sacred? The act of sex is a really sacred thing. And also, couples think intimacy is sex, but actually, intimacy is created by so much more than sex. Sex is way better when we are intimate. And so, I think trying to take away some of these stigmas from men, you're not doesn't affect your manliness if you can't have sex. There's actually something going on for you underlying, like you've said. Are you in trauma? Are you depressed? Are you totally stressed out? Are you worrying about how you're going to pay the mortgage? Because it takes its toll. All of these things in life takes its toll on us. And we just expect our beautiful, miraculous bodies to work, but sometimes they just need help along the way. And as you said, that compassion, kindness, love, unconditional love, understanding, working together as a team to see what the issues are. That creates intimacy, and that creates an intimacy is trust, and trust, then your sex life will come back if you're prepared to work on it in that holistic way.
Yeah, a good friend of mine says if a man's healthy, happy, and horny, he's in a good space, right? So, like, he's a nutritional coach. So, a lot of men are abusing themselves with food and alcohol and drugs. And another big one that's killing men's sex lives and relationships is pornography, right? So, if he's trapped in pornography, he will blow out the dopamine receptors, and all of these things start to happen where he can no longer actually even connect with himself to have a connection with a physical touch of the woman. And this is another big thing for men right now is porn addiction is, you've got to, like, if you're out there as men and you've got this going on, you need to go and address this real quick because it will destroy your relationship. It will destroy the intimacy. It will destroy the sex life with your partner, and it will give you a distorted view of sex. And you will never be able to fulfill it in the way, like Joanne's saying, you'll never be able to get that intimacy to really experience true connection. So these are things that, we're in this modern society and these things are running rife. Like every third or fourth man that I talk to is addicted to porn and no one knows. So that's a deep, dark shadow that they carry. And that's a sure way to lead to depression for men. And you're going to literally go into this depressed state and you won't even be able to connect with that woman. So it's just looking at that too. And yeah, just seeing what you guys can do to have a conversation around it. I know it's difficult, but sometimes those difficult conversations can lead to beautiful outcomes for you.
Yeah, I agree. And I would actually say the same for women, the porn addiction and looking after your body. Because again, as a personal trainer, as a coach, I know a lot of women, I've known a lot of women in my time, and I know so many women who are like, oh, I don't like sex, or, oh God, and they're like, it's a real chore for them to have sex. And you're like, we are so removed from what sex is about. I know sex can be quite functional for some people, or we know we're going to make a baby and that's about it. But actually, that's not really what sex is about. We've been given our pleasure organs on purpose. And there is such sacredness and pleasure to have from sex. But if you are not in your body, if you are masking things, and when I say masking or ignoring things, if we are not feeling our emotions, how can we possibly enjoy sex? If we are not dealing with our traumas, how can we possibly enjoy sex? And again, when you look at the porn industry, I know so many women. I remember because I had an influx of young women at one point, and they were saying to me they didn't even know how they were supposed to act in sex. Like they were basically looking around going, have I got the lighting right? Am I doing it correctly? Because they'd watched so much porn that they thought it was almost like a stage show. And you're like, wow, when did we stop listening to our bodies? When did we stop doing that? When did we become so disconnected? So having this time, which has got nothing to do with sex, to come back into ourselves, to start really honoring our soul and listen to our body, that's kind of the first step to awaken things. And if you can have a Kundalini awakening, wow, you're going to be on a great path.
And there's a reason all these things are so easily available and free. I always say there's a reason there's an alcohol shop on every corner. There's a reason why pornography is free. There's a reason why, they've pushed this OnlyFans, and all of these different things is to, like Joanne said, is to trigger our trauma first and foremost. That's what I believe a lot of this stuff does, because there's a lot of trauma around, sexual experiences and things that have gone on for men and women. There's been a lot of sexual abuse. There's been a lot of these things. And so we may not consciously have even experienced it, but unconsciously we're looking at the world and we're comparing ourselves, and we're not actually living in the experience, and we're closed down. Like, people are so closed down. Like, when you can get away from the screens, you can get away and you can come together, like you can have experience that will blow your like mind, and it's nourishing and it's enriching. So, one of the big things, and you will be surprised, the men that are addicted to porn, you wouldn't pick it in a million years. And 9 times when they actually share it with me, they're like, "Oh man, I'm addicted to porn
Mm-hmm.
and I can't stop. And the more I try to stop, the more I need to do it. And it's impacting my relationship, it's impacting my work, I'm losing my drive." And so it's really about, like I said, a lot of this is personal journey, but you're going to learn it in relationships. So that's where you've really got to go now, is to, can you have an open conversation with this person safely in a way that doesn't degrade or bring them down? And also, can you honor what you need? Because one thing I want people to understand out there is not every relationship is meant to last forever. And sometimes the lesson is, I love you, but I love you, I do, but I love me more. And I have to go, or I have to, doesn't mean you can't sit down and work on it. But if the other person's not willing to work on it and grow and expand, sometimes that's your lesson, is that I have to choose myself on this journey and move on to something else, or move on to honor myself. So yeah.
I agree with that. And we've answered the questions now, and I hope everybody enjoyed the answers. But we're gonna go and talk about a little bit about you and I. And I'm gonna come ask you a question in a minute about your relationship, Stacy, because there's a few curious people out there. But just about saying that I left my second husband, who was highly abusive, like full on narcissist. It was really bad. And I remember leaving him, and I remember thinking, I just need somebody who's really vanilla. I got somebody who was really vanilla, because you're always gonna get what you ask for, always gonna get it. But even the vanilla guys can be mean, and even they can do things. And I remember just thinking, he's been brought into my life to show me everything the other way, what I do want, what I don't want. But it was exactly that. Like, he was lovely in a lot of respects, but I looked at him and I thought, wow, there was just boundary after boundary. Like, these were my boundaries. This is what my outlook on life was. And it just got to the point where there was no growth whatsoever. There was no wanting to change. There was no wanting to work on things. There was no wanting to take responsibility. And I just lovingly let him go with pure love. Wasn't sad. I didn't even grieve it. There was no drama. It was just like, you're really lovely and you've got great potential, but I'm not going to love you for your potential. And I unconditionally love you, but off you go. And I don't think he was quite as happy about it as I was, but I just felt totally at peace with it, because I do love me more. And it's a great place to be. And you're right, not every relationship lasts forever.
And this is a big thing that people need to understand. Most people are in love with the ideal of what the relationship could be, not what it actually is.
Yes.
And, you can stay in love with the ideal of what it was in the beginning, what you think it could be in the future. But that's because it's safe, it's known, it's certain. I don't have to change. I don't have to take accountability. I don't have to do whatever it is that I need to do in order to make myself feel fulfilled in this life. So, look at life and just look at how many years have you been living in the illusion or the fantasy of the relationship, because that's a big one that I see in the world, right? Because, we're tribal beings, our DNA, our biology is that we link with this person and we stay with them forever. But that's very primal, because we live in a modern world that's evolved so greatly. And, like I say, if you can keep working on the relationship and you're both growing and expanding, then that's a beautiful relationship, and that will last and go a long time. But like I said, doesn't mean every relationship's meant to go forever. Some are for a short time, some are for a long time. Sometimes you might find that person that goes forever. But, if you're growing and expanding, then it's nourishing and enriching, then yeah, go for it.
Yeah, here. So, Stacy, you talked a little bit about your relationship and how when 3 years ago and you had no idea about the subconscious and your marriage was in tatters yet again because you'd repeated the same cycle yet again. people are curious to know if you saved your relationship.
Yeah, so we did. And
Woohoo!
yeah, it's one thing that I'm extremely proud of as a man because when it fell apart, I was very angry. I was blaming, I was projecting, and I was quite defensive. And I remember doing the work and coming back together. And I remember the first night after about a month that my wife and I knew the day she left it was over, Joanne. I was like, right, I know it's done. I wasn't even trying to get her back. I was just like, wow, okay, I need to solve this so that I can actually not recreate this in the future, thinking that, we're going to split and end this. I remember coming back and I remember we sat down for dinner one night and she said something and I'm like, oh shit. We're speaking about triggers today. I like literally wanted to stop and just touch my body because there was no response. And long story short, like 3 hours, she just shared and cried. I think I said one sentence, and I just remember her going to the door to go back to her father's, and she said, "Who the fuck are you?" And I said, "Fuck, I don't even know." So yeah, we came back together. It was a bit of a rocky road because I'd gone on this deep journey with a guy to start healing. This is the first space that I really stepped into. And then my wife or ex-wife or wife that we'd split, she actually went and did some sessions with the guy too. And the first session that she did, she had some huge breakthroughs and came home. And by the time I'd got home that day, she'd been to the building company because we had a section and she'd planned out this house that she wanted and all these things. And she came to see me. And I had a knowing that I wasn't meant to go there and I didn't want to go there. And this is when I talked to honoring yourself. So she said, "This is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to do." And I said, "I can't do that. I can't do that. It's not what I'm here to do. I don't want to live here my entire life. I need to. This is what I want to do." And so I said to her, "You can have this section and build your dream home down there." And so that's what she decided to do. She said, "Cool, I'm going to do that." And I'd actually come to a place of peace with it. That, I'm so happy that she's healing and she's going to find what she wants. And it was so beautiful, Joanne. There was, like you said, there was just compassion and joy and love for the journey we'd had, the children we'd created, and the life that we'd experienced. And I just stood in my truth. And it was about a few days, I can't remember, a few days or a week later, she came to my door and she goes, "That's not actually what I want." And she said, "I want us and wherever you want us to go." And that was the day we come back together. And it was beautiful. We've had a few challenges since because once you start healing and growing, there's going to be challenges. But it's so like the thing I love for her is how I can hold space when she speaks. So she can go through a storm and I'm just like a mountain in the storm. And she said it to me the other day. It's the most um, she's never felt so safe. She's never felt so seen and held. And for me, that's everything because I believe a man needs to do the work so he can become that mountain. Because life's going to bring some storms. And if you want a feminine woman, there'll be some storms. Now, there's a difference between an emotional storm and tantrums and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But, once you get to that space where it's not an attack on you because you've actually done the work, you just actually get to stay in this space and enjoy it. And yeah, it's like exciting to be in this relationship that you've been in for over 20 years, but you get to start reinventing it and recreating it and creating new experiences. And it's so awesome. So yeah, we're still together and still going really well and enjoying life at this stage.
I already knew because I've been sneaking at you on your Instagram, so I know that you're together. But it's nice that you've told the story, and I love it because I love, and I love love. So I love it when people do work out, but I also love it when people walk away and love themselves because that is true honor, and I think a lot more people need to do that personally. It's an opinion, yes, but I look at relationships and you and I, Stacy, here to talk about sacred relationships. Sacred relationships are not perfect relationships because perfect doesn't exist. There is no such thing as perfect. And, one day you might have a day with your partner and you might go, "That was the most perfect day ever." And you go, "Well, that's lovely." But not every day is going to be like that because life can be a right old shit show at times. And That's what I want people to understand. A sacred relationship does not mean it's going to be love and light and peace and happiness all the time. Yes, there will be that. But you know what there will be? There'll be two people working together as a team. As a team, that is a sacred relationship. They're not against each other. They're not always pissing each other off. When there is conflict, there is conflict resolution. There is not a blame game. Instead, both parties are willing to take responsibility and work towards conflict resolution rather than just carrying it on. It's just so much more than just fluffy clouds and hugs. Do you know what I mean? It's so much more than that. There's so many nuts and bolts. And you've been with your wife for over 20 years. And don't you think and even if you've been with somebody for 6 months, you're different than you were 6 months ago. So remain in curiosity and keep getting to know each other, because isn't that really exciting?
Yeah, well, like we're not taught any of this, we're like sold the white picket fence, marry that person, stay with them no matter what, eat shit if you have to stay with them, retire when you're 65 and live out your days till you die. And then we've got the other side of it now where it's so easy to throw something away. Like it's so easy to access the next best woman or the next best man, right? Like I can just go there. But until you unpack the bags of shit, they're going with you wherever you go. So, like you've got to, it's a really starting to learn who you are and honoring yourself. It's like what you shared, Joanne, like you knew you had to get out of the narcissistic relationship, so you wanted the opposite of that. Then you realized really quickly, like, no, this doesn't set my soul on fire. I'm gonna leave. And that's so beautiful. But if you've got a relationship that you've worked on and you've got some miles under the belt and two people are still willing to work on it, then put a bit of work into it. Like, see what you can pull out of it, see what you can, and work on yourself. Like, once I realized the more I work on myself, the better my marriage gets. Fuck. I'm like, it's not about me. Like it's not about me. I'm in the gym. I'm doing the things that I need to do. I'm doing the inner work, because then it's like, oh, now that's going to be mirrored back to me in my relationship, right? So, it's all about doing that work. And, the days of this surface level therapy are over.
Yeah,
Because if that model worked, none of us would need to be doing the work now, because it would have worked before. So,
exactly.
we
Yeah.
we've got to do the work now. And with the way the world's evolving, the technology, I'm a firm believer no one's getting out of this without doing the work, because the level of consciousness that we're going to have to evolve to meet the level of technology that's in front of us. This is why we're going through what I believe is the awakening, is the warp speed into consciousness, because the level of consciousness has got to evolve for us to survive as a species. So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
agree. And that sentence that you said, the more work we do on ourselves, the better our marriages. That's the same with every relationship. The more work you do on yourself, the better your relationship will be with your children, with money, with your thoughts, with how you feel about yourself. It all comes down to self, to the work we do on ourselves. And that takes courage and brutal honesty and time. Time. Look, I see people can heal from things really quickly, as she's talking about the conscious energy. It's coming for us. It's supporting us. It's holding us. It wants us to heal. So it's all for our encouragement. It's there. But it doesn't mean, when I say it can happen quickly, we can heal from certain things. We can go back to that inner child who was 5 years old, and we can give her or him what she needed, him or her what they needed. But then it's still going to come up. We just become better at noticing. We just become more aware, and we have the desire to want to do it, because we know it's for our greater good in every aspect of our life, like every single aspect. Nothing goes untouched when you do the work on yourself.
Yeah, and it's one thing to remember that, like all of us are here for different journeys, and some of us might not be on such a bigger journey this life cycle, and some of us may be on the spiritual journey of our lifetime, where we're being thrown in to evolve our soul and to stop a lot of those generational curses and things like that. And I see that a lot. I felt that with my journey, and I see that a lot right now, because we're the first, generations that have actually got the technology and ability to connect the way that we're connecting. A few months ago, I didn't know Joanne. I didn't have any connection to her yet through, social media and connection. Now we're hosting this workshop, and for a lot of our parents, it was hard enough to get a book,
Yeah.
let alone find a coach or a therapist. And so, it's very easy to compare other people's journey, but don't judge, your day one on their year five. You know, some people have been doing this a long time and you'll get there, but just commit to doing the work on yourself, being a student, and realize that everything has to begin in the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is going to be born in the darkness before their light comes in. So, just start to do the work, find a coach, move the needle from, always, this was the big thing that came through when my relationship broke down and I could actually see the pattern. And I said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And I said, you've been doing that for 40 years.
Yeah, time to stop, mate.
So I might just stop that, and do something different. And I don't say I saved my relationship. I believe I recreated it.
Beautiful. That's so beautiful. Oh, Stacey, it's been another eventful talk. We've been here for about 50 minutes, which, we always try and think, oh, we'll just do half an hour. It's never just half an hour because there's so much to talk about. But to our listeners, we thank you, and thank you for joining us on the Sacred Relationship Lab. And we will be back next week. So please send your questions. As you know, you heard today that they're anonymous. We're more than happy to say your name if you want to, but we're happy to do the anonymous ones because we know it's a bit of a sore subject for a lot of people. So from Stacy and myself, we send you lots of love, and we will see you next week.
See you next week, guys.